Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Vista's Votes. We are so excited this evening to be joined by the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Arizona, Ms. Kathy Hoffman. Welcome, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Guys, we are so excited once again. Vista Votes is our series to make sure that we, as Sierra Vistans and Cochise counties, have an opportunity to speak with the state and local candidates who are running for office, the individuals who are running to represent us and represent our voice. We want to make sure that everyone is informed about the issues and where these potential elected officials stand on those issues and how that will directly affect Cochise County. And I want to make sure that at the beginning of this interview, I state that we are nonpartisan. We have reached out to candidates on both sides of the aisle, and we haven't heard back from our Republican candidates yet. So right now, we are just interviewing the candidates that have agreed to come on and join us here in Sierra Vista and Cochise County. But Ms. Hoffman, you're no stranger to Cochise County. From my understanding, you were here last week.
Yes, I had the privilege of visiting the beautiful schools first in Douglas and then in Benson. And in prior visits to Cochise County, I visited schools in Bisbee and other parts of the county as well. And I'm in close contact with the county superintendent there, Jackie Clay, to make sure I always have an ear to the ground of what the most pressing issues are in Cochise County.
Yes, man, Miss Clay is amazing. If you want to talk about someone who has taken a position and totally reinvented, what it means to be the Cochise County Superintendent of Schools, she has done so much to advance and advocate for education here in Cochise County. We are so proud to have her, and we're so proud of the work that she has done and is doing. So, Ms. Hoffman, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Why did you decide to run for Superintendent of Public Instruction?
When I ran the first time for the 2018 election, I had worked my entire career in Arizona's public schools, first as a preschool teacher and then as a speech therapist, working in special education in our public schools, first in the Vale School District and then in the Peoria School District in Phoenix. And so I absolutely loved working with our students, loved working with alongside our teachers and parents to serve students. But what was eye-opening to me was seeing how severely underfunded our schools were, and also seeing the direct impact resulting in having colleagues leave the classroom because of the how our state continues to underpay our teachers. And so I knew I was very passionate about making change in Arizona, and really strongly believing that educators should be leading in education. And so when I was elected in 2018 as a first-time candidate, it was the first time in over 20 years that Arizona has elected an educator to lead the Department of Education. And so I think that for me, it's about really being present across the state, learning directly from all communities about their unique needs. So I have visited hundreds of classrooms across the state in all 15 counties and absolutely love this work. So it was not a difficult decision for me to decide to run for re-election, because I absolutely love this work. And now I have a greater urgency around these issues, the issues facing public education, because my daughter Clara is only 10 months old now, but by the end of my second term, she'll be in kindergarten. So we have a lot of work to do here still in Arizona.
Excellent. So, wow, that's enlightening. The first time in 20 years that an elected official was to represent is the superintendent of public instruction is an educator. Right. Do you feel like that has a role to play in why we're ranked, 48th or 49th in education? Like, tell us a little bit more about that, because that's the number one thing everyone always says, right?
Absolutely. Many of my predecessors were actively attacking our public schools, attacking teachers. And I see this role in contrast, coming from the field as an educator. And I see this role as being the chief advocate for our schools and really understanding the needs of our teachers and our school leaders to ultimately learn what's best for our students. But I also see my role as strengthening relationships between our schools and communities, between teachers and parents, as best as I can from my role. I want to be that bringing that positivity and celebrating the achievements of our school, because I truly see public education as an investment in the future of our state.
Wow. So, there's a lot of initiatives going on throughout the state. One being with Education Forward. Previously, you guys may know of College Access Arizona or Expect More Arizona, and they're doing some really great work, especially leading on the Achieve 60. Is your office currently working, as part of the Achieve 60? Tell us about that.
Absolutely, on many fronts. I actually created a position in the department that for the first time is focused on post-secondary transitions, a post-secondary coordinator, because we have an entire department focused on career and technical education. So we have thousands of Arizona students who graduate high school with their certificates in things like welding or all kinds of different professional fields. I was just in a school where they were so proud of how many of their high school students graduated with their nursing, the pre-nursing certificate, so they could work as a tech or as a pharmacy tech as well, those types of professional fields. So we do have that part of the department now with our post-secondary coordinator, which has made us more engaged in initiatives like the FAFSA challenge, the statewide FAFSA challenge. And then I also, in my role, I serve on the Board of Regents, which oversees our 3 state universities. So I do see my role on the board as helping to strengthen those connections and finding ways for our 3 state universities to be doing more to support our schools, but also in working with them to support our educator pipeline.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot. So you are an incumbent, right? I think you're actually one of the only incumbents that we've interviewed so far. So tell us a little bit about what you accomplished, what you're most proud of, and what you look forward to being able to accomplish in a second term if elected.
Well, we know the last couple years were among the most unprecedented with dealing with the pandemic. But the silver lining of that is that we have had the opportunity to allocate a substantial amount of federal COVID relief funding that is directly to benefit and geared towards supporting our students and our school communities. And so just a little bit of background, when I was first elected, the Arizona student to school counselor ratio was astronomical. We were averaging 905 students for every 1 school counselor, which was worst in the nation. Knowing that there's a lot of bipartisan support around school safety and also supporting the mental health of our students, we worked in a bipartisan way to increase, to add $20 million of state funds with the state legislature to add more school safety positions. And that program is for school counselors, social workers, and the student resource officers. And it's up to the local schools to decide which positions they would like to request. Well, we then realized we had a huge wait list of schools that were requesting these types of school safety positions, that the state funding was not sufficient. And so we ended up using another $21 million of federal funds from my office to fund the wait list, to fund all the school counselors and social workers. So then, as of the last data we have available, we've actually reduced that student to school counselor ratio by 20%. And we know that our school counselors, they help not just with mental health, which is of course critically important during these times, but they also do help with career readiness and helping our students with figuring out their future plans. So our counselors are really important to our schools. So I'm really proud of the work we've done to add hundreds of these positions across the state.
And what are you looking forward to having an opportunity to accomplish in a second term?
So one of my other priority areas is on teacher recruitment and retention. We must do more to ensure that our teachers have competitive pay. So I'm still committed to working with our legislature and our future governor to continue to advocate for our teachers to have competitive pay. I see that especially in rural parts of the state where housing is often a challenge, and far too often, and it's in our rural schools that they're really struggling to hire a math teacher or a special education specialist that the school really needs, or even that school counselor. Maybe they have the funding, but it's really hard to recruit and retain some of these positions. So I'm committed to continuing to build on that work and continuing also to find innovative solutions. We're working with an organization called the Arizona Student Opportunity Collaborative, which is right here in Arizona, specifically to ensure that our students in rural schools that don't have access to a certified teacher in more rigorous types of instruction, so like AP classes, dual enrollment, or career and technical education classes or honors classes, ensuring that they can actually take those classes virtually, which is not the most perfect solution. You know, we want all of our kids to have that in-person experience, but if they otherwise don't have that teacher in their school for that type of coursework to get them ready for their future careers, then I think it's a really innovative way to meet the demands of our students and families.
Excellent. So that's a lot. That's a lot to get done. There's a lot of work. I was skimming through your website these last few days, just learning a little bit more about your stance on things and what's been accomplished. But tell us a little bit behind the scenes. What has been the most challenging aspect in your role? Something that you didn't expect to encounter?
For me, the most challenging part of this role is the politics. So there have just been so many times when, to me, what's most needed or best for bringing schools stability or the resources they need, there's just the political winds, the really weaponizing some of these issues. And so, for example, I know when I've talked to leaders and teachers in Cochise County, they're really worried about the aggregate expenditure limit. And there's been a lot of advocacy around that issue. So that's the spending cap that was put into law over 40 years ago. And now if the legislature fails to take any action, it will cut over $1.3 billion across the state. But this would actually have the biggest impact to our smaller, more rural districts, because they would effectively have to cut roughly 16 to 17% of their budget more than halfway through the school year, which is just not feasible. So this is causing a lot of instability in our schools, and I've been calling on Governor Ducey and the legislature to please convene a special session. And I know that Superintendent Jackie Clay has also been a huge advocate on this issue as well, of really trying to help our lawmakers to understand the urgency around this issue, but the inaction on it is extremely frustrating when, to me, again, the solution is so simple. If the money's already been allocated to our districts, they simply need to have permission to draw it down from their bank accounts.
Interesting. Okay. Well, look, let's go ahead and we're going to visit your website a little bit more. We'll hit a couple of those issues and just learn a little bit more about your campaign. Give me 1 second here. All right. So everyone, you can go to electkathyhoffman.com. Just learn more about her. Pardon me, I'm going to go to you. All right. Some of your accomplishment, your priority. I'm sorry.
Scrolled too fast. You missed my daughter, Clara.
Ah, yes. Miss Clara. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, I got little ones running around right now. I think they turned on the speaker. Excuse me for that. All right. Your daughter Clara here, they'll have more information about who you are, your accomplishments, your priorities, some of the things that you've done, right? And then let's visit some of your priorities. So as you were speaking about before, recruiting and retaining high quality teachers, supporting mental health of our students, that's a big one. I know that NAMI here in Cochise County has been doing a lot of things with NAMI on campus. Bridging the digital divide, that's huge, especially here in rural communities. Creating welcoming and diverse inclusive schools, expanding career and technical education, supporting our teachers and school staff, reducing classroom sizes, and of course, just preparing students for future success. But let's talk a little bit more about the supporting mental health of our students. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned first, very proud of the work we've done to add more mental health professionals to our schools, adding hundreds of school counselors and social workers. So having those on-site specialists is really critical. We've also been providing a lot of professional development to educators at no cost to them, so that they, one really important area is in suicide prevention. we provide free trainings. One is called Youth Mental Health First Training, and we also believe in offering train the trainer models, especially for rural communities, so that it can be hard for people to whether they need to travel to Phoenix or that type of thing. We really want to break down all the barriers, so we're really big on train the trainer type models as well. But ultimately, our students have gone through a lot these past couple years. The pandemic's been very challenging. We've had so many kids who have lost grandparents or other really important family members, or even sometimes people in their school communities like teachers or crossing guards. So we really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to connect families to resources.
Excellent. And speaking on that, when you talk about bridging that digital divide, what have you seen throughout the state, and more specifically, what have you seen in rural communities?
I think for me, one of the most eye-opening aspects of the pandemic was realizing the severity of the digital divide. So meaning people without access to internet or even cell service, or not having access to computers at home to be able to get online when our kids were learning remotely. So that has been a huge priority for me. And I launched the technology task force in the department during the pandemic, where we convened people from philanthropy, nonprofits, the tech industry, business leaders, along with our school IT folks, all bringing them to the table together. And one of the biggest recommendations from this group was for the department to create an Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. And so we have now established that office, and part of their work is working with rural communities. They actually travel quite often out to rural communities. And one service they offer, for example, is in cybersecurity training, because actually we've had some districts in rural parts of the state that have had really major cybersecurity issues, which is really a big issue for student data privacy and that type of thing. But then also another avenue of their work is in expanding high-speed internet out to students' homes. And we do that through utilizing federal funds and working innovatively to ensure that students, even in the most rural and remote parts of the state, have access to internet.
Okay, excellent. Now, this is something that's close and near and dear to my heart. I have the privilege of serving on the First Things First Regional Partnership Council, and an amazing group of individuals really advocating for youth and quality first pre-K. So I see here you have universal pre-K and full day kindergarten. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is huge for me as well, huge priority. So I started my career as a preschool teacher, and then working in our public schools, I've just seen firsthand the importance of families having access to both preschool programs and full day kindergarten. And when I've traveled to rural parts of the state, I've heard even more urgency around this issue. I've talked directly with the superintendent of NACO about this issue, and he's asked me directly, how can we fund preschool, which is so needed, and to serve families. Ultimately, it's about serving our families' needs. I was recently just in San Luis, Arizona, near Yuma, and they shared with me at the Gadsden Elementary School District, they have 8 full preschool classrooms, but they still have a wait list of 100 kids. So the demand is there. We just need to fund it. So that goes back to the politics that get in the way of progress. To me, the solution is so simple. We should fund preschool. We should fund full day kindergarten, so that burden does not fall on families to have to pay for tuition-based programs, and especially for families who can't afford that option, or that's not what's best for their family. So I'm very passionate about that for all kids.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about the politics of that, right? How have you in the past navigated, working across the aisle to get funding passed, and how do you look to do that in the future, right? You have a lot of priorities and things that you want to accomplish, but at the end of the day, those things take dollars and cents, right? You got to have the money to do that. We can talk all we want, but if we can't back it up and fund it, it doesn't matter. What's your plan to work across the aisle to get that done?
The way I've had success in working across the aisle is by bringing those stories directly from our school communities, like the ones I've mentioned, and really bringing those stories straight to our lawmakers. And I meet with them one-on-one, but also through my State of Education speech that I deliver annually. We also look for the data of what's working in Arizona. I think our lawmakers like to see that something is effective and in demand before making a decision to fund it. But we are also looking to the federal government for funding, especially for preschool. We're actually planning to apply for additional federal funds, and we're just waiting for this application cycle to get going here very, very soon. But we do plan to also be applying for federal funds for preschool. It's just Arizona has a history of not funding preschool, and so it can be really challenging when the funding like starts and stops and starts and stops, because that has such a big impact on people's livelihoods.
Right.
So we really want to have sustainable funding. So it is really important to be working with partners like First Things First to ensure that there's various sources for the funding.
Right. So, man, where do you see the future of education in Arizona going, right? Like I said, we're ranked 48th or 49th. What does it look like to move that up? I mean, even to 30, what is that going to take? What do we need to do in this next 4 years, these next 10 years?
We definitely have our work cut out for us, but I have to say there's so many phenomenal, dedicated teachers working alongside parents and families for making sure our kids get a high quality education. And just, I have to say, like, I recently met Mr. Ty White, he's from Wilcox, from Cochise County, and he was recently named the 2022 National Rural Teacher of the Year. Mm-hmm. So we have the most phenomenal teachers right here in Arizona that are just going above and beyond. Like, he's bringing his students to NASA. They are doing phenomenal things. So I do think with being innovative in some areas, advocating for more funding, ensuring we're strengthening that teacher pipeline and doing everything we can to retain and support our teachers. We're investing heavily in mentoring programs, also in, because we are concerned about our students' achievement in the key areas of reading and math and those types of things. And so also ensuring that our teachers are trained in the most evidence-based practices. So we are also deploying reading specialists and providing free professional development in the most effective ways of teaching math and reading. So I think I have a lot of hope and optimism for the future of Arizona. I can't wait for my daughter to be a part of our public schools, and I'm already picturing what she'll be like when she's in preschool and what her teachers will be like. So I do think that it's up to us all as communities. It's up to parents and business leaders. I don't know who all is tuned into this right now. It can't just be the education community saying that we need to fund our schools. It needs to be every single key community member, including business, including nonprofits, including healthcare, saying, or including IT and tech. Everyone saying this is our future. This is the future of Arizona. And what are we all going to do collectively to ensure that it's the most high quality that it can possibly be for all kids?
Right. One example of the business community coming together and supporting teacher is with the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, right? They started and funded Tucson Values Teachers, which is an amazing organization that has really done a lot of great things in Tucson and Southern Arizona. And I know that I'm glad, I didn't know this about you, but I'm glad to hear that you started off in Vail. And it sounds like you started off when Vail wasn't the Vail that we know now, right? It was probably a little bit more rural at that time. But even just having a representative, in a sense, from Southern and Southeastern Arizona, like that works in our advantage, and you've been here a number of different times. I've seen you at Mrs. Clay's her innovations in education. You've come and spoken there, and you've traveled throughout our communities, and we really appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing you to continue to come down here and helping us and making sure that funding is coming to rural communities, especially Sierra Vista and Cochise County, right? So, Ms. Hoffman, is there anything else that you want to convey to our listeners tonight about why they should vote for you, what you plan on doing, and just your final words and thoughts.
Well, first, thank you so much for taking the time. And as I've mentioned, being superintendent to me is the best job that I absolutely love, celebrating the successes of our schools and then taking the time to learn about what are the biggest challenges facing our schools and facing our students, facing our teachers statewide. And I already have on my calendar to come back for Superintendent Clay's conference next January. So, you'll keep seeing me frequently in Cochise County. I think that's such an important part of my role as being a collaborator, a partner, really making sure that I am available to represent all parts of Arizona. And I think that's really important. So as a mom, as a career educator, I am looking to the future and just don't want to skip a beat. I want to keep up this momentum, continuing to support all our schools across the state. And I ask for your vote, ask for everyone's vote this November. And please tell people how important this election is. It's not every state elects the superintendent of public instruction. So this is a privilege and opportunity in Arizona. And I strongly believe that having a career educator leading the department makes a difference in Arizona.
Well, look, thank you so much, Ms. Hoffman. I look forward to seeing you in January. And, like we kind of briefly discussed before the interview, we have some amazing projects and things going on with the Douglas Education Partnership Council and their progress meter. We're planning a conference called VIVA, which stands for Visualize Yourself, Invest in Your Future, Venture Out, and Accelerate Your Dreams. And we're looking at really becoming a model for how we can approach education in rural communities. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this evening. Once again, this is Vista Votes. We are here to make sure that your guys' voice is heard, that you have an opportunity to speak with the individuals who are going to be representing you and moving Arizona forward. So without further ado, everybody have a great night. Ms. Hoffman, thank you so much.
Thank you.